Hello, welcome back to the podcast. If you are new here, I am Danielle, also known as Mrs. B, and this is the With Mrs. B podcast, part of the With Mrs. B and Build a Life You Love ecosystem. This is where we explore the foundations that help us live with more intention, more alignment, and more courage. And each week, I am focusing on one of the foundations that I believe is fundamental to building a life you love. And this week, we are talking about spiritual connection. And before I go any further, I want to say something really important. When I talk about spiritual connection, I am not talking about a particular religion or in any kind of narrow sense. I'm talking about your connection to something bigger than you. For some people, that is God, it is faith. For some, it is spirit, the universe, a divine intelligence, or simply just this quiet knowing that you know you're not meant to carry life alone and there is something bigger than you. And yesterday, inside my Build a Life You Love coaching community, I dropped a little pocket coaching session called Trust the Anchor. And today I wanted to go a little bit deeper into this idea because one of the greatest sources of anxiety, exhaustion, and control in our lives comes from this belief that we have to hold everything together ourselves. And I'm just here to ask, what if we were never meant to hold it all ourselves? So let's dive in, shall we? Most of us develop this need to control as a coping strategy. Some of us more than others, but human nature is we are just trying to control our environment and the outcome of things as a way of keeping ourselves safe. It's why we plan. And as humans, we anticipate and we analyze and we prepare for every possible outcome. And sometimes, a lot of times, right, that's wise. But a lot of the time, what we would consider to be or want to call being responsible is actually fear dressed up in like taking care of business, productivity, responsible sort of costume, if you will. And control really just becomes this safety mechanism. And the more we feel like things aren't going the way we anticipated them to go or think they need to go, we just grip tighter and insist on controlling tighter. We try to manage all of the different variables, or we replay conversations in our mind. We're predicting what might go wrong. And what's underneath all of that, friends, really, whatever form this control or anticipation or worry or gripping, whatever underneath that, it's really just one fundamental quiet fear. If I let go, if I don't do the right thing, if certain things don't happen, everything's going to fall apart, right? I'm not going to be safe. But here's the truth. Even when we think that we are in control, we're not, right? Control is an illusion. Life is unpredictable. People are going to make their own choices. Our health is going to potentially take a shift. Opportunities appear and disappear. And when our sense of safety is always dependent upon our ability to control the outcome, we're going to end up living a constant state of tension, anxiety, right? And worry. And that is exhausting. It's this place where spiritual connection, connecting to something higher than yourself, bigger than yourself, and knowing that you don't have to carry it all alone becomes the most powerful. Because spiritual connection introduces a different outlook and posture toward all of these uncontrollable things in life. It introduces not control or knowing the outcome, it introduces trust. So I would like to dive into a visual, if you will, of how I think of trust in this scenario. And I want you to think about trust as an anchor on a boat. An anchor on a boat does not stop the waves, it doesn't control the weather, it doesn't eliminate the movement around the boat. What the anchor does is it creates stability. It creates a sense of comfort that while we might be rocking about and the storm is going around us, we're going to stay grounded here. When the storm passes, we're still going to be right here. It's stability in the midst and despite all of the movement. That is spiritual connection. So it's not really about spiritual connection or being grounded in something bigger than yourself makes things easier. It's about having something to really steady yourself with and to connect to when life is rocky and uncertain. And when you can trust that anchor, you stop trying to control every wave that comes about. Instead, you return to a place that steadies you and allows you to know that this storm can pass and you'll still be here. And so when it comes to spiritual connection and what this anchor looks like for different people, for some people, that anchor can be prayer. For some, it's meditation. I know many people that their anchor is a quiet time in nature or reading scripture. Whatever it is simply the practice of remembering that you're not alone in this and that there is something bigger than you to anchor you in the most difficult times. This anchor is the place where your nervous system gets to soften a bit because you remember that there is something wiser and larger than the current moment that you're in. So, um, I am well aware of, and I want to be honest about the fact that I know that this trust business, this analogy of the anchor, sounds really beautiful in theory. Um, I am also well aware of the fact that it is incredibly uncomfortable in practical application and practice because trusting something outside of yourself requires letting go of certainty. And our brains love certainty. Our human brains love certainty, and control feels protective. It feels productive, right? And surrendering or trusting feels like we're not doing anything, we're not taking care of business, we're being passive. But I want to invite you to consider that surrender is actually not passive, but a form of tremendous courage. It is the moment when you say, I'm still going to show up, I'm still going to do my part, but I'm going to stop pretending that I can control everything. There is a big difference between responsibility and control. Responsibility means we act with integrity. Control means we believe that somehow the outcome is entirely up to us. So, in these moments where there's that tension between responsibility and control, spiritual connection comes in, holds that tension, and we get to act. We get to be in responsibility, and we also get to release the grip and release the attachment to the outcome. Here is the shift that changes everything. When you can trust in that anchor, when you are trusting the anchor, whatever that means to you, you are not giving up your power, but putting it where it belongs. Your power isn't in controlling every situation, but rather it's the things that you can control, your choices, your effort, your character, your response. Remember last week we were talking about how you respond to triggers and how powerful it is to hold your responses. Um, your faith, right? Your power is in your faith. Your power is being an aligned version of how you want to show up. And when you anchor yourself spiritually, you stop trying to always manage life from a place of fear. You begin responding to life, not reacting, but responding to life from a place of really grounded trust, from surrendered trust. And that changes the way you move through every part of your life, the way you lead, the way you show up in relationships, as a parent, in business, and in the really hard decisions in life. When you are anchored, you aren't reacting to every single wave of life that comes along. You get to be steady. You get to be anchored. So, my question this week, as we lean into spiritual connection and this idea of being very anchored in our trust, how do we actually practice trusting this anchored spiritual connection? I'm going to give you 3 simple ways. Okay. The first is I want you to notice where you are gripping, where you are trying to control, and to ask yourself, where am I trying to control something that's actually not mine to control, right? That's the first question. Where in my life am I trying to control something that is not actually mine to control? Maybe this is very common. It's somebody else's behavior, right? Maybe it's an outcome that you're desperate to have go a certain way and you want to guarantee. You're trying to control the outcome. Maybe it's a timeline of something that you need or want deeply. Becoming aware of where you're trying to control is the very first step. And then I want you to create an opportunity for yourself every single day to reconnect, like a reconnection moment every single day. Because spiritual connection, this grounding, this ensuring that you're anchored isn't like a one-time decision, right? That we just decide and from then on, whenever something tough comes along, we're good to go. No, it is an intentional decision every single day. It's a daily return to this reconnected, grounded moment. It can be a simple 5 minutes of just quiet, of prayer, of meditation. My favorite is 5 minutes of gratitude, right? Reading anything that is really grounding and brings you back to center and reminds you that you're like right here. Everything's going on around you, but you're right here. Um, Go outside, take your socks and shoes off if it's not freezing cold out. Get your feet on the ground, right? Feel the ground underneath you. Feel the wind on your face. Breathe the air in. It doesn't have to be complicated, but give yourself at least 5 minutes every day to reconnect to that grounded, centered feeling. Okay, so it doesn't have to be complicated, but it does get to be intentional. And then number 3, practice the language of release. Sometimes the most powerful spiritual practice for me is to simply say, like, I have done what I can do. The rest is not mine to carry, and I'm surrendering it. Like I'm just handing it over and I'm trusting the outcome. That acknowledgement and statement alone in that moment can entirely change your nervous system. It shifts you from this gripping control energy to the surrendered, trusting energy. So, that is to say, if you take anything from this episode today, let it be this. We were never meant to carry life alone, control everything, figure everything out, and guarantee any kind of perfect outcome. Nada. There is wisdom beyond and outside of your current moment. There is actually, in my humble opinion, absolute awe in knowing that it is way bigger than me and my ability and this moment, right? That means Anything is possible in the moment that I release control and I release my attachment to the outcome. Now, any outcome is possible. There is strength beyond our own current understanding of how something gets to be, right? And when we can anchor in that trust, whatever that anchor means for you, for me, we can stop living in this constant tension and need to control. We can begin living from a place of steadiness, and we can know that life is not going to be predictable, but we know where we can return and where we're anchored when it isn't, right? All right, friends. If this episode on trusting the anchor and spiritual connection resonated with you, I would love for you to join us inside my Build a Life You Love community, where we continue these kinds of conversations every single week. And if you are part of the community and you haven't listened yet, go check out this week's Pocket Coaching Trust the Anchor, where we chat about this in a really short, powerful reflection. But until next time, my invitation to you is to stay grounded, stay curious, trust the anchor, and go build a life you love. I'll talk to you next week. Goodbye, friends.